The last 24 hours have been loud, confusing, and emotionally charged for anyone watching XRP. But before we jump to conclusions, let's slow this down and look at what actually matters. Because when markets move on headlines instead of understanding, that's when most people get caught reacting instead of thinking. And what's happening right now isn't about hype, it's about interpretation, timing, and how information spreads faster than context. If you're here right now, stay with me for a moment, because this isn't one of those videos that rushes to tell you what you want to hear. This is about what's being said, what's not being said, and why that difference matters more than ever today. Quick pause. If you want clear, calm crypto updates without panic or false promises, hit the like button. It helps this video reach people who are tired of noise. And subscribe if you want consistent, level-headed breakdowns instead of emotional clickbait. Now let's talk about what everyone is reacting to. Over the past day, the word Swift has been circulating heavily alongside XRP, and whenever those two names appear together, emotions spike instantly. Some people interpret confirmation where there is discussion, others hear speculation and treat it as final news. That's exactly why we need to slow this conversation down. Swift is not a company that makes casual announcements. It doesn't operate on hype cycles, and it doesn't communicate in ways designed for social media excitement. When information related to Swift enters public discussion, it usually comes through technical language, long-term planning, or structured updates, not dramatic declarations. What's important right now is not whether someone on the internet says confirmed, but whether the underlying direction of global payment systems continues to move toward modernization, interoperability, and efficiency. And that trend has been happening quietly for years. XRP exists in that conversation not because of price, not because of speculation, but because of design. Speed, liquidity bridging, and settlement efficiency are not marketing slogans. They're requirements for modern financial systems. Whether institutions use XRP directly, indirectly, or alongside other technologies is a decision that unfolds slowly, not overnight. One of the biggest mistakes retail investors make is assuming that if something matters, it must show up immediately on a chart. In reality, most infrastructure decisions happen long before markets react. By the time price responds, positioning is already underway. This is where patience separates understanding from frustration. Markets today are not driven purely by human decision making. They are influenced by algorithms, liquidity models, and institutional behavior that doesn't care about daily emotion. When price moves suddenly, it's often because multiple forces align, not because one headline changed everything. That's why headlines feel powerful, but rarely tell the full story. XRP holders don't want to miss anything. But the bigger risk is misunderstanding what's actually happening. Missing context causes more damage than missing a moment. There is a reason experienced market participants don't chase urgency. Urgency is emotional. Structure is strategic. Another thing people need to understand is that confirmation doesn't always look the way people expect. In financial systems, confirmation often means compatibility, testing, alignment, and regulatory comfort, not a press release designed for retail audiences. That process is slow by design, and slow processes create impatience. Impatience fuels speculation. Speculation fuels volatility. Volatility fuels engagement. That cycle benefits platforms, not people. If you've been watching XRP for a long time, you already know that its story has never been simple. It has lived at the intersection of innovation and regulation longer than most digital assets. That alone makes it different. What's happening today should be viewed as part of a longer narrative, not a final chapter. Financial infrastructure evolves in layers. Each layer builds on the previous one, often invisibly. Retail investors tend to focus on when. Institutions focus on how. That difference explains why conversations often feel disconnected. Now here's where things get interesting. Even without dramatic announcements, the direction of global payments is changing. Legacy systems are being evaluated. Speed is becoming non-negotiable. Cost efficiency is no longer optional. Transparency matters more than ever. These pressures don't disappear because markets are quiet. They increase, and assets designed to address those pressures remain relevant regardless of short-term sentiment. This doesn't mean price must move today, tomorrow, or next week. It means utility doesn't vanish because attention fades. The biggest misconception in crypto is believing that adoption must be loud. In reality, adoption is usually boring, technical, and incremental until suddenly it's everywhere. Think about how online banking evolved, or digital payments, or mobile wallets. None of those changes happened overnight, but once they crossed a threshold, they felt inevitable. XRP's relevance exists in that type of transition. Another key point, markets don't reward certainty, they punish it. Anyone claiming absolute confirmation is either misunderstanding the information information or selling confidence. Responsible analysis acknowledges uncertainty without fear. If you're feeling conflicted right now, that's normal. Markets are designed to create emotional tension. They test conviction before they reward patience. This is why education matters more than excitement. If you're still here, that tells me you're not just looking for noise, you're looking for clarity, and that mindset alone puts you ahead of most participants. Before we continue deeper, one more reminder, this is not financial advice, this is market context. Always do your own research, understand your risk tolerance, and never rely on a single source for decisions. In the next part, we're going to continue exactly from here and break down why institutional timelines don't align with social media timelines, how information actually moves inside financial systems, and why moments like this feel bigger than they often are in real time. So if you don't want to miss the continuation of this discussion, make sure you're subscribed. And picking up exactly from where we left off, this is where perspective becomes everything, because the moment information hits the public space, especially in crypto, it instantly mutates. Context gets compressed, nuance disappears, and what was once a technical discussion becomes an emotional headline. That's not accidental. That's how attention works in modern markets. When people hear phrases connected to major financial infrastructure players, the brain immediately jumps to outcomes instead of processes. But institutions don't operate on outcomes first. They operate on feasibility, risk mitigation, and long-term alignment. That means most of the meaningful work happens quietly, far away from social media timelines. This is why institutional timelines and retail timelines almost never match. Retail traders think in moments. Institutions think in cycles. Retail wants confirmation. Institutions want stability. Retail reacts to headlines. Institutions react to frameworks. Once you understand that difference, a lot of frustration starts to dissolve. The financial system we interact with every day didn't appear overnight. It was built layer by layer, often through boring committees, pilot programs, and regulatory negotiations that never made headlines. The same process applies now as systems modernize. Speed doesn't come from urgency, it comes from preparation. That's where many people misinterpret silence as absence. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It often means things are happening where cameras aren't allowed. XRP's position in this landscape has always been unusual because it was designed to connect systems rather than replace them. That design philosophy matters more today than ever. As financial systems become more interconnected globally, interoperability stops being optional and starts becoming essential. Interoperability isn't exciting for headlines, but it's foundational. Without it, efficiency gains collapse at scale, and scale is what institutions care about most. Another point that needs to be said clearly is this. Confirmation in finance rarely looks like celebration. It looks like compatibility. It looks like systems talking to each other. It looks like reduced friction, lower costs, and fewer errors. None of that shows up immediately in price candles. This is why price action alone is such an incomplete lens. Markets don't move based on what people think should happen. They move based on positioning, liquidity, and incentive alignment. When enough participants lean emotionally in one direction, markets often move the other way, not to punish, but to rebalance. That dynamic can feel personal, but it's mechanical.